Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Module 7 of Relocation Assistance 101. Victoria Beal. I am pitch hitting for Paula Hyman as the behind-the-scenes technical support this morning. And we have Patty Mormon, who's been your instructor all throughout. So I'm certain that you guys are pros at this GoToWebinar software, but just as a quick reminder, in the question box, if you have questions, please put them in, and I'll make sure that Patty is able to know what it is you've submitted, and she will work on getting you an answer. There are going to be poll questions throughout. Please make sure you're responding to those poll questions. That's how we know that you're actively participating. And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you have any issues with your audio, you can always toggle between computer audio and phone call, and then toggle back, and that usually will reset your sound bridge. If not, you can use your phone to call in. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Patty. It's all yours.
Okay. Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome back. We are now on Module 7, which is the last module. You guys are almost done. There's quite a bit of information in this module to go through, and I'm hoping I want to get through all the information to leave enough time to do a review of the complete Relocation 101, and also to give you some information and instructions on the exam. So I'm going to go ahead and get started so that we can get through all of this information. This is again, our final module. In this module, we are going to talk about the residential move types, the non-residential move types, the loss of goodwill, and the economic loss. My contact information is always on your in your student handbooks. If between finishing this module and before you take the quiz, if you have any questions, you want to call me to go over any information just to kind of prepare, because we don't really have a a set time to really do like a prepare for the exam. Feel free to give me a call. I would be available this Wednesday or this Friday. Thursday I will not, so feel free. You have my contact information. Just give me a call. Okay, move related expenses. So again, we're going to talk about residential, and we're going to talk about the non-residential. And this module, it's pretty long. I did not separate it out into 2 sessions, but there's a lot of information in it. So if you feel like I'm going too fast, just put something in the question box, so we can slow down, because I want to make sure you guys get a really good understanding of these move benefits. And keep in mind, these modules are just the overviews. Well, detailed information on these move costs are in the advanced courses for both the residential and the non-residential. So at the end of this module, you'll be able to identify the move options for the residential displacees, the move options for the non-residential displacees, determine the cost of a residential schedule move and of an actual cost move. You'll be able to state the criteria for reimbursing non-residential moving expense, state the maximum dollar amount for reestablishment expenses in Ohio, calculate a non-residential fixed payment, and classify non-residential move items. Now, you'll also be able to state the criteria for reimbursing non-residential loss of goodwill, state the minimum dollar amount for loss of goodwill, and state the criteria for reimbursing for non-residential economic loss. Now, for the last 2 topics that I just mentioned, the loss of goodwill and economic loss, those 2 items are Ohio specific. You will not find them in the 49 CFR, the federal regulations. But if you recall, in the very first module, we talked about if a state passes their own law, then Federal Highway will recognize and participate in these benefits. So while it is important to be familiar with the regulatory requirements regarding the moving expenses, it's essential to know where to find the information. Now, I don't expect you to be able to walk around and just rattle off all of these sections and 49 CFR Part 24 Subpart D, but it's important that you know where to go and where you can find them. And you'll notice as we go through here that on a lot of these slides it does state, and down at the bottom or over at the side it will state the section that you're going to find this information in. It's a great reference material. Sometimes it's a lot easier if you keep this as reference material to go back and find that section, and then you go to the manual online and it's easier for you to find it. So in ODOT, the residential moves are in section 6400. The non-residential moves are in section 6500. So let's talk about the residential moves first. So again, this is just an overview of these move options. We'll go into a lot more detail in Relocation 201. However, should you have any questions now, if you don't understand or you want a little more information on one particular move type, just put the question in the question box. Or if you want to follow up with me with questions Wednesday or Friday before you take the exam, happy to talk over whatever you need to talk about. So a residential owner occupant or a tenant who is displaced from a dwelling is eligible for reimbursement of actual, reasonable, necessary moving expenses. There are several different options that a residential displacee has for moving expense. They can do a commercial move, they can do a self move, or they can do a combination. And you do see a combination of moves, quite often. They do something on a fixed schedule move, but they've got a few pieces of really large furniture. They want to bring a commercial mover in to move it. They can do that. So let's talk about the commercial move. So a residential displaced person can elect to have a commercial move and have a professional mover come in and complete the move. Now, ODOT uses bids to determine the reasonable cost for this move. A bid is a firm, fixed price for a given moving job. All bids must be prepared not to exceed and need a signature of a mover on the bid or estimate. I see a lot of billings come in, review a lot of files, and I will tell you, this is something that a relocation agent misses probably 50% of the time. The bid needs to be not to exceed. You need to have a signature of the mover on there. So make sure you are looking for those things and requesting those things. You need to obtain 2 bids from qualified movers, and the lower bid sets the maximum benefit for them to receive for a commercial move. Now, if it is a low-cost move, $2,500 is considered a low-cost move. You can request approval to use 1 bid. Now, the requirement to use 2 bids, it's not mentioned in the federal regulations, but it is a good business practice, and it is required on ODOT projects. So the displaced person, they can obtain the bids or the agency can arrange for the bids. But I caution you, if the displaced person is the one that is getting the bids, you need to make sure that all the information that is needed is on that bid. And you also need to make sure that everything in that bid is eligible for move costs, that they haven't stuck something in that maybe isn't supposed to be in there, such as maybe they salvaged back a piece of property, but they're having the commercial mover move it for them. So the choice of movers for the ultimate move is left to the displaced person, and the contract for the actual move is between the displaced person and the mover. Thus, it is removing the responsibility from the agency for moving the personal property. Now, the agency often pays for the move, even directly to the mover, okay? But that contract and what's on those estimates, it's between the mover and the displaced person. Their name is on the bid. Your name isn't on the bid. ODOT's name isn't on the bid. The city's name isn't on the bid. It's the displaced person. They are the one that are contracting with the moving company. Let me catch up here. Okay, so when you have a commercial move, another thing that is included in the cost of that move is if there's any utility hookups for, stove, dryer, those things are covered under in that move cost. The cost is to be in there. If that moving company is moving that dryer, he should be included the cost, even if he has to go get a sub to hook it up. Remember, that is for a commercial move cost. Okay, so another option available to a residential occupant is a self move. Now, in a self move, this is when the displaced person, they are responsible for moving the personal property to the replacement site. Remember, in a commercial move, the mover does the moving. In a self move, the displacee is doing the moving. Now, the displaced person can either be reimbursed for a self move using a schedule, which is based on the number of rooms in the displaced dwelling, or it can be by actual cost incurred in the move. So first we're going to talk about the schedule move, which is also called a fixed payment. So this payment is based on a fixed residential moving cost schedule. And this is published by the Federal Highway, and it is periodically updated. We recently had this schedule updated. I think it was in July, August. I mean, like really recent. And some of the amounts did go up. So the fixed schedule rate was it was recently updated. I have the date as July 27th. So as of July 27th, there you need to make sure you are using an updated fixed move schedule. So the schedule also provides for the moves from dwellings with either little or no furniture. There's different categories on this schedule. Now, this schedule that I have up on the screen, this is a schedule for all the states. Now, this is just the one page, so there's multiple pages that show additional states. The one that I have highlighted in yellow, and here's a closer look, this is specific for Ohio. This schedule is also in the manual if you go on ODOT's website, and it has been updated, so it does show the new amounts. Now, in some cases, a displaced person will have an unusually large amount of furniture. Personal belongings may be stored in the basement, an attic, or outbuildings. So the way you calculate the move cost for if they do a residential move schedule, you're going to look at the number of rooms in the house. So they have 3 bedrooms, living room, dining room, kitchen. There's six rooms. So you're going to go over here, 6 rooms. Okay, there's the amount. But then you're going to look, okay, what do they have? Is this basement like totally full? Okay, they've got a big outbuilding, and then they've got another detached. They've got a shed over here. So what do you do with that? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to decide how many pay rooms, how many, a pay room being an average room of furniture, how many additional pay rooms they have. And then you add that amount. So if you went by, they had 6 rooms, and then, okay, how many additional rooms do they have for what's in the basement? How many additional rooms for what's in the pole barn? So there you'll see there is a column there for additional rooms, and you will have these as your handouts, so you can see them a lot, a lot bigger. But that is how you determine a fixed move schedule. Now, the advantage of the schedule method is that it minimizes the paperwork for both the agency and the displaced person. You don't have to go get any receipts. You're not getting move bids. It's just, here's the schedule, here's the amount. You do the move. Once you're done, here's your check. You don't have to show me anything. You're just, putting the money in your pocket. So then we have a residential self move, which is by, again, it needs to be actual, reasonable, and necessary. You have to determine if the costs they're incurring are reasonable and if they're needed. So what are they going to, if they do this move themselves, what are some of the things maybe that they might need? Do they need dollies, boxes, packing materials, tape, labels? Do they need to rent a U-Haul? And what's the cost in the U-Haul? And usually they charge them a certain amount for every mile they drive. The cost of putting gas in the U-Haul. They're going to have to, unfortunately, show a lot of receipts for this type of move. Self-move actual costs. It's a lot of extra work for not only the displacee but also for the agent going through all of that. That's why it's probably the least uh, um, the option that's used the least. You're either going to do the fixed move schedule or you're going to do the commercial move. So in your handouts, you also have this residential move cost chart, and this you will definitely you want to keep handy when you are doing your quiz today, and also for later when you are completing your exam. Your exam will be open book, so you can use any of your student handbooks. You can use any of the handouts that were given to you. So make sure that you do keep this handy when you are doing your test. So looking at our graphic of a residential move cost, we've discussed the commercial move, as well as the schedule move and the actual cost move. So federal regulations and ODOT manual, they also provide the flexibility for the residential occupants to combine these methods to move their personal property. And I mentioned that a little earlier. They may, they want to do the fixed move schedule, so they can put a lot of money in their pockets, but let's say they have a few things over here, they're just too big and heavy. So they can do combination moves. An example would be a displaced person can be reimbursed under the schedule, let's say, to move 8 rooms of furniture in their home. And, and then they can hire the commercial mover to move their workshop, which is full of lumber and tools. So the agency needs to ensure that there is no duplication of payments. If they are bringing in a commercial mover to do any of this, you got and you're going to be paying that bill. Make sure that what that commercial mover is paying for did not, those items didn't include what you gave them also under the fixed move schedule. So residential moving expenses. So let's talk about what all can be included or can be eligible and reimbursed as a residential moving expense. So the agency can reimburse for up to 50 miles. And in unique situations and with approval, it's possible to go over the 50 miles, such as, they're moving to another state, but not just because it's preference, but there's a good reason as to why they're going over 50 miles. Packing, crating, uncrating, unpacking, you know, the labor for that is all eligible. The agency can pay for disconnecting, dismantling, removing, reassembling, reinstalling household appliances and other personal um, property. But keep in mind, on the fixed move schedule, if you look at the first room on that schedule, you'll see that it's much more than the other. And that's because the first room of a fixed move schedule allows for the anticipated cost of disconnecting, reconnecting. So if they are choosing a fixed move schedule, you're not reimbursing an additional fee for disconnection, reconnection. But if it is a commercial move, that can be in the commercial mover's estimate. The agency can reimburse for storage of personal property not to exceed 12 months if it's justified and if the district real estate administrator approves. There has to be a reason. It has to be justified. If it's longer than 12 months, then it needs to be approved by central office real estate. Insurance for the replacement value of personal property for damages or loss during the move or during the necessary storage is reimbursable. If you have a commercial mover preparing an estimate, you need to make sure that that estimate includes insurance, and you need to make sure that it is full 100%. They normally do not do full 100%, so you have to make sure that they have been instructed to do that. The fee will be a little bit higher than what they normally charge for that, but that is something that you have to make sure that that estimate invoice has on it. Replacement value for the personal property lost, stolen, or damaged can be reimbursed under certain circumstances when insurance is not reasonably available. Federal regulations do provide flexibility by allowing an agency to pay for items that are necessary for the move unless they are specifically listed as ineligible. For example, special services such as an ambulance to transfer persons who are physically handicapped may be necessary in some situations. And housekeeping, and I've mentioned this before. Housekeeping is, let's say you have an elderly couple or an elderly woman, or you have someone who is has a disability, and a moving company will uh, go the extra mile. They will actually put pictures back on the walls. They will put dishes back in the cabinets. That's called housekeeping. And they do charge an additional charge for that. So if it's justified, if it's reasonable, if it's necessary, that is something that is reimbursable. I've also had claims, other things that would be special situations that they're being reimbursed for is piano tuning. There could be special costs for moves for, I've had one that had a grandfather clock that required a special, a special type of move in a person to move a grandfather clock. I've also had one where we had to move chickens. So sometimes you have these unique situations, and as long as it's reasonable, necessary, and justified, then they can be reimbursable. as a move cost. So using your move chart that you have, which of these costs do you think would be reimbursable? So based on what we just discussed, so we have a commercial move. The low bid is $4,500. So then the other bills that they have, okay, they have a utility deposit, which is refundable after 1 year of service. They have a utility reconnection fee. They have a telephone reconnection fee. They have a realtor's fee for locating a replacement dwelling. And Bob's Appliance Service uh, sends them a bill to reconnect a gas dryer. So looking at these expenses, which ones do you think would be reimbursable as a move cost? So utility deposit, we never reimburse for a utility deposit. I mean, they're going to get it back. So obviously we're not going to participate in that. The realtor's fee for locating a replacement dwelling, again, we're not going to reimburse them for that. So the other ones, reconnecting the gas dryer, the cost for the other, the telephone, you will sometimes see for, like Dish or Spectrum, but make sure in their contract, in those cases, it doesn't say that there's no fee. All you have to do is call up and they locate it to the new location. So in this case, the total payment that would be reimbursable is $4,875 because we took out the utility deposit and the realtor's fees. So are there any questions about that before we go to the first knowledge check?
I have not seen any questions come in yet, Patty.
Okay. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to our first knowledge check. You will need to use your residential fixed move schedule and your move cost chart handout sheet. Okay, so here's the first situation. The Youngs live in an apartment unit with 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, kitchen, and a living room. So based on your fixed move schedule, what do you think the Youngs' schedule move amount would be? So we have A, could be, is it 5 rooms with 1,400? Is it 4 rooms with 1,200? Is it 4 pay rooms at 200 each for a total of 800? Or is it 6 rooms or 1,600?
It says it's still distributing the poll, so
Okay.
hopefully folks will be able to vote here in a second. All right, now it's collecting responses. And if for some reason you can't answer on your screen, hit your escape button. It's probably because you're in full screen mode, and then that way you can respond. So I'm going to wait until we get hopefully more than 80% of you who voted. And there's 16 total on the webinar, so I need just about everybody to vote here. We're up to 50%, so we've got 8 of you who voted so far. The answers are coming in fast and furious. I think that's the name of a movie, too. All right, we're almost there, guys. We're not actually recording which answer you choose, so if you haven't chose one yet, pick one so we can go ahead and share the responses, and Patty can tell us which response was the correct one. Okay, we're there. I'm going to go ahead and close this poll and share the result. So we've got 4 rooms or $1,200 was selected 50% of the time. 4 pay rooms at $200 each or $800 was 42% of the time. And then 6 rooms or $1,600 was 8% of the time. So I'm going to hide those responses, and it's all yours again, Patty.
Okay, so the correct answer is B, 4 rooms at 1,200. They have 2 bedrooms, a living room, and a kitchen, so they have 4 rooms. Now the 4 pay rooms. Remember, pay rooms are if you have extra. So pay rooms would be if you have extra stuff in a basement or extra stuff in a barn or a shed. So so while it is 4 rooms, it's not, it goes by the 4 rooms on the schedule, and then any additional areas, that's when you move over to the pay rooms. So again, the correct answer, 4 rooms, $1,200. Okay, so let's go to the next question. So the Barneses live in the same building as the Youngs in a very similar unit. The Barnes also, in addition to having the 2 bedrooms in the kitchen and the living room, live in a similar unit. They also have a storage locker that's in the basement for which they store skis, fishing equipment. So what is the barn schedule move amount? What would you give them because they have the extra locker in the basement? So would it be 3 rooms at 1,000? Would it be a total of 4 rooms at 1,200 plus 1 pay room at 200? Would it be 4 rooms, 4 pay rooms at 200 each or 800? Or would it be 6 rooms at 1,600?
Right, everybody voted really quickly this time, so I'm ending the poll already. And I'm going to share the responses. We've got 92% of the folks who chose 4 rooms or 1,200 plus 1 pay room at 200, and 8% chose 3 rooms or 1,000.
Okay, and B, 4 rooms at the 1,200 plus the 1 pay room at 200. That is correct because you know, the 4 total rooms, they have the extra storage in the basement, which doing 1 pay room, because it looks like it's, you know, it's just a normal 1 pay room. It's, you know, if it was a ton of you know, inventory and personal property down there, you could add 2, but it sounds like from the description, it's 1 is the would be adequate. So it's a total of 1,400 because you got your 1,200 plus your 200. So you guys did really well. Okay, let's go to the next one. So the next one is Mr. Dickey lives in a 1-room efficiency apartment. He does not own the furnishings, and he has minimal personal property in the room. So what is Mr. Dickey's schedule move cost? Well, this one's a little tricky. I don't think we specifically talked about, you know, what happens if they're in a furnished room, but your schedule does have a category for furnished rooms. So first possibility would be 1 room or $600. 1 room plus 1 additional pay room at $750. 1 room with no furniture, which is $400, or 2 rooms at $800. So what do you think you should be giving him for a fixed move schedule?
I need one more answer here, and I can close the poll out. Okay, there we go. I'm going to close the poll out, share the responses. All right, we have 62% chose 1 room / no furniture or $400. 31% chose 1 room or $600, and 8% chose 1 room plus 1 additional pay room or $750.
And the correct answer is C. If you look at your schedule, you have 1 room, but it's in the category for no furniture. The A is for you know, that's for 1 room that has, you know, that has furniture in it. So you have to go clear over to the right in the category with no furniture for the $400. So C is correct. Okay, let's go to the next one. Mr. and Mrs. Miller live in a small apartment unit. It is simply 1 large room, about 20 by 20. Functionally, the Millers use the area as a living room, bedroom, kitchen, and dining room. What is Mr. Miller's schedule move cost? And when you're picking this, keep in mind, you know, there could be, you know, different agents could pick different scenarios, you know, just depending on what, you know, what they think, you know, how much he has in there, you know, how he has the rooms divided up, or if he thinks they're one big room. So do you think it's one room with 600? Do you think it's 4 rooms at 1,200? 2 rooms at 800? 3 rooms at 1,000? It's, it's a judgment call. It'd be easier to make if you were actually standing there looking around the room, but this is just to kind of get you thinking, you know, of what you think would maybe be reasonable.
Well, they have voted, and it's an even 50-50 split between one room or 600, or 4 rooms or 1,200.
Yeah, and while it's only one room, a case could be made for paying for it as if it were 4 rooms. But again, you've got to use your own judgment. They're really, you know, as long as you are justifying, to the relocation reviewer, well, I think it's 2 rooms because, they only have a divider down the middle, or I think it's 4 rooms because, it's divided and it's really the size that, would be like a 4-room house or whatever. So, it could be whatever you want it. I mean, you're gonna use your judgment here. So there really wasn't a wrong or right answer on this. It was more just to kind of let you kind of look at the schedule and think, and kind of make your own judgment as to what you feel would be fair. And of course, your relocation reviewer has to agree upon it. Okay, let's go to the last question for this knowledge check. So Mr. and Mrs. Garrett will be moving from their 7-room home as a result of a road widening project. You have worked with them to obtain 2 moving bids. One is for $4,700, one is for $5,150. So the lower bidder, the moving company, has completed the move, and you have received the following invoices from the Garretts for payment. So which of those on the list do you think that they are eligible to be reimbursed for? So they've got the invoice from the mover for the $4,700. They've also got a plumber hookup fee for an ice maker and a gas dryer. They've got cable TV, internet hookup for $225, telephone reinstallation, new porch light installation for a total of $5,750. Which of those do you think it's reasonable to reimburse? Um, which ones were reasonable, necessary, actual?
People are voting quickly. I'd say they're getting the hang of this. All right, here we go. We've got 80% responded. I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and we'll share the responses. We had 73% of your participants chose 5,575, 18% chose 4,700, and 9% chose 5,750.
Okay, the correct answer is actually B, 5,575. And this is why. So the only thing you're going to really remove off of that is the porch light. We're not going to reimburse them to install a new porch light, but they can get reimbursed for the other cost if the movers if his final invoice didn't also charge for the disconnection, reconnection of the ice maker, the gas dryer, telephone reinstallation, which we really don't see that much anymore because we all have cell phones, and with the cable and the internet, you know, as long as they don't have it in their contract that it's free to move and set up, if that is a cost that we're causing for them to move, we would reimburse it. But you got to make sure that they wouldn't normally just move it for free. Okay, let's go on to non-residential move costs. So a business, a farm, or a nonprofit organization is eligible for moving expenses if it is in the occupancy of the date of acquisition. So we're going to discuss the move options for non-residential displaced persons, as well as the moving expenses and reestablishment expenses and related expenses. And again, keep in mind, this is just an overview. We're not going to get into great detail because we'll go into much more detail in the advanced class. So a business may choose either a commercial move, a self move, or a fixed payment, or a combination of a commercial move and a self move. And remember, a commercial move, the mover's doing the move. A self move, the business is taking responsibility for the move. Okay, so let's talk about the commercial business move first. So like a residential displaced person, they can choose a commercial move to relocate their personal property. If a business elects to have a commercial mover complete the move, the agency will obtain 2 bids, and we will reimburse the displaced person based on the lower of the 2 bids, just like in residential. You still need to make sure, you know, that the bids are signed, that they're firm, not to exceed, and that they have the full insurance in them as well. So, for example, Joe's Movers may submit a bid for $19,000, and Al's Movers may submit a bid for $22,000. The agency would agree to reimburse up to $19,000. So, you know, can the displaced business select Mike's Movers to complete the move? Yes. I mean, they can select another mover. They don't have to use the 2 movers that you based your maximum bid on. But again, you have set the maximum amount. So your maximum amount you set was 19,000 because that was your low bid. So they can have Mike's Movers do the move, but you're only paying up to 19,000. And just as with residential moves, on low cost moves of less than 2,500, only 1 bid is required. Of course, you have to get your relocation reviewers concurrence on that. So, and you know, if you feel the move is that simplistic, the personal property is, you know, there's not a lot there, and you're sure it's going to be under 2,500, you know, you can just go with the 1 bid. As long as it comes in under 2,500, you're good. If it doesn't, you got to go get the second one. So the business owner may also choose to move their personal property using a self move. So this means, again, that the owner takes full responsibility for moving all the personal property. So there are 2 ways an owner can be reimbursed for a self move. First, there's what we call a negotiated self move. This is based on the lower of those 2 estimates that you obtained, minus any applicable state tax. If the owner is taking responsibility and moving it himself, you're not giving him tax, you know, you're not including the state tax in the amount. The owner does not have to document their time and will be paid the full amount upon completion of their move. He doesn't need to document his time because you already have the bid that has and you have established the maximum amount he can receive. So since the moving companies are typically not going to be awarded the job, and you know that, and you know that at the time you ask for the bids, then you're usually going to pay them for that bid. You know, if they are competing for that move and the owner has already indicated that he's going to have a mover move them, then you don't pay for the bid. That's just part of doing business. But if you know the owner's already said, I'm moving myself, and you're only getting those bids to establish your move amount, then you're going to offer to pay for those bids. So the second option is for an actual cost move, or bids not obtainable. And this would be bids not obtainable, you would have something really unique and unusual. So this second this second option, this actual cost, is kind of like the one we talked about with the residential. So you've got all the costs must be supported again by, you've got the receipts, you've got invoices, they have to account for their labor, all the equipment used. Labor costs will be limited to what a commercial mover pays their staff. So if a business says, I want to do it all myself, I'm going to keep track of everything, hours and all that, they can't be charging $90 an hour for someone to do a task when the normal fee for a commercial mover would be 20. So this type of move, it is advantageous when the personal property is of such a nature that typical movers do not possess the skills to disassemble, pack, move, or reassemble the business's machinery. Really special items that it takes a special company to come in and move an item. And sometimes you will see this where you will do the negotiated settlement, but this business has a big piece of equipment, whether it be like a really uh, electronic technical paint booth, or a big hoist or something like that, which even sometimes it's in their warranty with that company that says we're the only ones that can come and touch this thing and move it. That's an example of why you would have the actual cost and what would be a really good, reason to use one. It often in those situations is also much more cost effective because that company knows how to move that, and a commercial mover probably does not. And so, they may add a lot of additional cost and time in there that is really not necessary. So when a displaced person chooses an actual cost move, well, and it can either be by the contract move or it can be by the different self moves we just talked about. The agency must obtain or create an inventory, and this inventory goes on ODOT's Form 6113-1. The RE 6113-1 should show a sketch of the property, and it should show the location of the inventory. The inventory should be documented with lots of photos, clearly labeled, and should also, if they have an inventory, it's a fluctuating inventory. You see this a lot on car lots. One day they have 10, the next day they have 20, the next day they have 12. This is something where you have to clearly identify that in your inventory. And the Relocation 202 course, which is the business course, goes into much more detail about inventories for businesses and preparing them. Preparing the move specifications, which is the last document that just popped up on your screen. A lot of detail and instructions to the mover as to, so they know exactly what they have, how they need to move it, and the owner is going to be the best person to tell you, what it's going to take to move that piece of equipment. So you need to make sure when you're doing this inventory and when you're writing move specs, and which are the instructions for the movers, that you are preparing this stuff with that owner. So a business may also choose what we call a fixed payment. Now, this is not to be confused with the fixed move schedule that we just talked about for residential. Remember, the fixed move schedule is based on that schedule of rooms put out by Federal Highway. A fixed payment for a business is a payment that is in lieu of all other moving and related expenses, And later on in this module, I will go into a little more detail on exactly how that is calculated. Now, once they have you have your inventory all done, you have your move specs all done. Of course, you're going to do up another memo to the file. That's one thing in relocation you will find you do up a lot of memos to the file. Anytime you make a determination, or you're putting together, asking for relocation reviewer to look at your inventory, look at your move specs, and give concurrence before you move forward, you need to do up a detailed memo to the file for approval, because the relocation reviewer has to look at everything, has to approve, has to approve the direction you're going all along the way with your parcel. So anyone who qualifies as a displaced person and who moves from a farm, a business, or a nonprofit organization is eligible for payment of the actual moving and related expenses. So, but how would the agency know if a moving expense is actual? Well, you're going to know it's actual because you're going to have a receipt, or you're going to have a paid invoice from a mover, or they're going to give you canceled checks to show that they actually incurred the cost. So what would be a good definition then of how are you going to measure whether a cost is reasonable? Well, the cost should not be excessive or extreme. It should not conflict with the with the reason. Um, Reasonable people, given all the facts and applying sound judgment and consistency, would arrive at a reasonable conclusion. So when they're coming up with these costs, whether it's the moving company or whether it's the displacee for a self move, you need to consider, is this reasonable? Is it a reasonable cost? Um, for moving this item from point A to point B. And if you're a new agent, you really need to rely on the experience of the relocation reviewer, or the managers who have a lot of experience in moving, relocating, and reimbursing, especially the complex businesses. So let's look at the third category. So how would you assess whether it was necessary for a business owner to incur a particular moving expense? If the incurred reasonable cost is permissible, a permissible type of cost, and it directly contributes to or is caused by the move, then it is necessary. So for example, if local codes require the installation of safety barriers around a piece of machinery as part of the moving and installation of the machinery, then it's a necessary cost. Now if the business is trying to do some upgrades and at the new location, and they aren't required, and they aren't reasonable, and they aren't necessary, they're just deciding, okay, we're moving to a new location, let's just do all these extras, then you're not reimbursing for the extras. It's what's reasonable and necessary and actual. So let's talk about when you're doing asking for the move cost, you're doing up your inventory, you're doing up your move specs. What are expenses that are eligible for moving for a business, farm, or a nonprofit? And they're really similar to what we talked about with residential. You've got your transportation, and the transportation again is up to 50 miles, unless there are really unique circumstances. Unique circumstances for a business is maybe this business needs to be by some kind of a waterway, and to get to the new they found a new location, but it's not within 50 miles. That would be a reason that would be justified to maybe reimburse them for 60 or 70 or even 100, because it's necessary. Of course, the packing, the disconnects and the reconnects, storage. Again, the storage is 12 months on again, you got to justify it. It's got to be justified to put in the storage. It's just not, automatic. Let's put it in storage for 12 months and reimburse for storage costs. You have to support it. So when it comes to the disconnects and the reconnects, the agency will reimburse for the cost of disconnecting, of dismantling, removing, reassembling, reinstalling, relocated machinery and equipment, and other personal property. Now you're going to see this a lot more in businesses than you do in residential. In residential, your disconnects, reconnects, pretty much just the appliances. But when you get into businesses, especially the complex moves, then you're going to get in. You're probably going to get into a lot of the disconnection, reconnection, dismantling, and in some situations get rather creative in the sequence of the moves. And again, that's what your move specifications for, are to lay it all out as to how this move needs to happen. So the payment for the dismantling, reassembling, disconnection, reconnection, this payment will cover the cost of the labor and the materials to take down and set up the machinery, the equipment, the telephones, the computer networks. It also includes modifications of the available utilities or the replacement to the replacement structure to accommodate the personal property, or modifications to the personal property to accommodate utilities. So the personal property may have to be modified at the replacement site to meet laws and codes like OSHA. So an example would be a restaurant owner. He's moving his range hood, and now he must include a fire suppression system. So the new fire suppression system is required at the new place to operate the hood. So we talked about storage. Insurance, we've talked about insurance. Again, if it is a commercial move, you want to make sure you've got that full insurance on that bid. Full, not the partial that they usually will automatically put on a bid. Damage or breakage that may occur during the move or the storage. The agency will reimburse for the cost of the insurance to cover this, and it is typically included in the commercial mover's cost. But again, make sure it is the full coverage. Now, the agency can pay for the replacement value of property lost or damaged during the move where insurance was not reasonably available. However, the loss or the damage will not be covered if it was the fault of the business owner or their agent or employee. So if they are taking full responsibility for their move and moving it moving the equipment themselves or by their own agents, that's different. They are taking full responsibility for any damage, any breakage. The insurance, the full coverage, that is with a commercial move. The commercial mover is coming in, and that is one of the reasons why you want that contract to be between the mover and the displacee, not the mover and you. So license, permits, and certifications may be reimbursed if they are required at the new location. However, the agency may limit the reimbursement to the remaining term of the existing license or certification. For example, the displaced business obtained a 3-year occupational license 1 year ago, which is not transferable. So the new 3-year license will cost $1,500. So how much do you think we should reimburse? Well, they've already used up a year of that, okay? and now they're required to go out and pay for 2 more years. Okay, and they paid for 3. So what would be a reasonable amount to reimburse them for that? It'd be like $1,000 because they've lost the 2 years that they've already paid for. They used one up, but they have a loss for the last 2. Non-residential moving expenses continued. Again, you're going to get into a lot more when you have a non-residential move. So the displaced business may need professional services, so assist with the planning of the move of the personal property. Um, could be, it could be the moving of the property. It could be installing the property. They may need specialists to move large items of personal property, install machinery and equipment at the new location. When the business changes addresses, they may need to advertise the new business location. They also may need to replace stationery, letterhead, business cards, logo and promotional information. Could be calendars, that are the things that are now obsolete because they either have they have the old address on them. Sometimes, and if the phone number changes, that could count too. Yeah, a lot of times in these days, though, businesses tend to print a lot of their own letterhead, but with the business cards, you do still a lot of times see the business cards. The actual direct loss of tangible personal property, um, this provides a possible useful option for any business that may have outdated equipment, old merchandise, or other items that is no longer wanted or needed for the operation of the business. And this is something that would be discussed in much more detail in the advanced class. Substitute equipment. They could instead of moving something they have, they may choose to simply replace it with a newer item at the new location. And again, that's something that will be discussed in more detail in the advanced class. They can also get search expense, which is their time, gas, mileage, looking for the replacement site, and that has a cap of 2,500 on it. There's also a category in moving that is called low value, high bulk, and we touched on that in one of the earlier modules. That's where it's not where you're bringing a commercial mover in. Now this is like you have a pile of gravel, you have a pile of lime sitting in a farmer's field, you have maybe a stack of hay bales. These are things that are, sometimes it's more economical if you just pay the value of the item in place than try to get and find someone, and then come up with a move cost to actually move the items onto the residue. Reestablishment. So small businesses, farms, and nonprofit, they are also eligible to receive a payment called reestablishment expenses. There is a cap on reestablishment of $25,000, and reestablishment payments, they're in addition to moving payments. So what is reestablishment? Reestablishment is when they need to make renovations to the replacement site so they can conduct their business. They find a new site, they move into it, but there's things we gotta do to this building, or even to the parking lot, or in order to they can successfully operate their business at the new location. So let's talk about what some of these things might be. So one thing you need to keep in mind when it comes to reestablishment, again, you have to go back to the phrase actual, reasonable, and necessary. And with each of the items that they want to upgrade, improve, or at the new location, you have to run it through the test of is it an actual cost that they incur, is it reasonable, and is it necessary for them to operate their business. So we have the expensive repairs of improvement to the real property required by law. Okay, that is reimbursable. So what is an example of what these would be? In the first category on the slide, code items. Okay, examples would be ADA modifications. Maybe they need to have a ramp. They need to have separate bathrooms. They need to have fireproof doors. They need to have additional exits. And the one we just talked about a minute ago, they needed to have the fire suppression system. The next category allows modifications to make the replacement structure suitable for conducting business, such as installing office walls or partitions. They may need special lighting depending on the type of business. If they need better lighting for maybe they detail cars. The business owner, they can construct or install a new sign to advertise the business at the replacement site. So reestablishment also allows a business to replace or redecorate soiled or worn areas at the replacement location. A business owner may run an ad in the newspaper or choose a radio station or television advertising to advertise their new location. That's going to fall under reestablishment. Business owner will also have higher rents or other expenses at the replacement site. The estimated increase in rent, taxes, insurance, and utilities for the first 2 years they're at the replacement site are an eligible reestablishment expense. But keep in mind, once there is a cap of 25,000. Once they get to 25,000, they're done. I mean, there's no exception to go over that 25,000. So there's also what we call related non-residential expenses. So these expenses that are included in this category, they're used to be reimbursed as reestablishment. They used to be reimbursed as reestablishment expenses, and so they were under that cap, and they were subject to that 25,000. But in February of 2005. These three items are now considered reimbursable under actual, reasonable, and necessary. So they're not included in that 25,000. So this has provided the additional payments to the displaced businesses, and it's freed up some funds under the reestablishment category. So the first item is for connection to the available nearby utilities from the right-of-way to the improvements to the replacement site. So this provides for the running of utilities, which could include electric, water, gas, sewer, from the access point of the right-of-way to the new business site. The second item is for professional services performed prior to the purchase or lease of the replacement site to determine its suitability for the displaced business. Those services, examples of those types of services could be soil testing, feasibility and marketing studies, but do not include any fees or commissions directly related to the purchase or lease of the property. The last item included is impact fees or one-time assessment fees for anticipated heavy usage as as determined necessary by the agency. I relocated a laundromat, and the city could have, but decided not to, give them a one-time, fee for anticipated heavy usage of water. They chose not to, but they could have. If they did, that would fall under this category. So on this slide, we're going to go through an exercise using the moving and benefits chart that you have in your handouts. So on this chart, you will see a number of claimed moving expenses. So we're going to collectively classify them and decide what is reimbursable using the follow abbreviations. Now, if we were in a live classroom, we could do this in groups. So since we're not, I'm just going to go through these and we're going to talk about the classifications. So we have a moving, what we're going to do is we're going to say whether they, what category they go in. Is it a move cost? Is it a reestablishment cost? And is it reimbursable? There's also the category that we just talked about called related non-residential. Remember the ones that were used to be in reestablishment, now they're moved out. Those three benefits that have the additional payments that are not in the $25,000 cap. And then there may be some on here that are ineligible. So we're gonna identify the ones that are ineligible. So we've got a move cost. Okay, of course, for the moving costs, the low bid was 25,000. So that is, of course, the category is the move cost, and it is reimbursable. So we've got reconnecting the telephones. So we would put that under, that would be a move cost, and it is reimbursable. Reconnecting a computer system, that falls under move cost, and it is reimbursable. So we've got the professional fees to recalibrate the x-ray machine. That is, the x-ray machine is personal property, it is a move cost, and it is reimbursable. So we've got install an exterior ADA ramp per code. That would fall under reestablishment. We've got the exterior signage. Again, that would fall under reestablishment. Advertising the replacement site in a newspaper, that would be reestablishment, and it is reimbursable. We have the water impact fee. Remember, we talked about that with the laundromat. It is reimbursable, but it's reimbursable under that related non-residential. So it does not fall under that 25,000 cap. It's in addition. So they expanded the water line from the right of way to the replacement building. And again, as long as it was found to be necessary, it is reimbursable under the related non-residential category. So then we have the utility deposits. Again, they're going to get this back after 1 year. That is, it's while it is a cost they're incurring now, it's not reasonable and it's not necessary. Because they're gonna have that money back in their pocket. So we are not going to reimburse them for it, and then in a year they get another payment from the utility company. So let's do our second knowledge check. So the first question for our second knowledge check is a non-residential business move requires 2 move estimates unless the estimate cost for the move is found to be low cost. So what is that amount that makes it a low cost move? So you only have to get 1 estimate.
The poll is up. So Everybody's voting really quickly here. Thank you, everyone. All right, I'm going to close it out and share the responses. We've got 92% who chose 2,500 and 8% that chose 1,000.
Okay, and answer C is correct. 2,500. That is the number that will let you know you do not have to get a second bid. But keep in mind, you need to go to your relocation reviewer and they need to concur. Okay, the next question. A business may choose an actual cost self-move. In this option, two commercial estimates are secured, and the low estimate sets the maximum that the business will receive. Now, this is more commonly known as a negotiated settlement, and no documentation is needed for the business. Is this true or false?
Got the poll up there now. People are voting quickly. Glad to see they're still with us. All right, I'm going to close the poll out and share the responses. We have 60% that said false and 40% that said true.
Okay, and the answer is that it is false. And the reason why it is false is because you already set the maximum that they could receive with your bids. So you already know if their low bid was 19,000, that's what they're going to receive. And they don't have to give you anything to follow up with that. You know, they do the move, you do the post move. If everything's gone, they get their 19,000 because it's based on the bids. It's based on your low bid that you already set the amount. Okay, next question. Question number 3. A business may receive reimbursement for expenses associated with its search for a replacement site. What is the maximum payment for search expense that they can receive? Is it 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, or 2,500?
Well, I know what the business would like to receive, but that isn't necessarily what is the appropriate amount. So, all right, we just got over 80%. I'm going to close the poll out and I'm going to share it. We have 50% that chose 2,500, 33% chose 1,000, and 17% chose 5,000.
Okay, the correct answer is D. The maximum for search expense is 2,500. That is for their time, their mileage, their gas spent in searching for a replacement site. Okay, the next question is for a business, storage may be approved up to 12 months. Approval of this benefit is required by who? Is it the relocation agent, the relocation reviewer, and the district administrator, or is it the relocation reviewer and central office?
Got lots of votes coming in. It seems to be all across the spectrum here, so I'll be curious to see what the answer is. All right, I'm going to close the poll out and share the responses.
Okay,
So
and the correct answer...
Can you see it?
Yes,
okay.
I can. And the correct answer is C. The relocation reviewer and the district administrator approve storage. Central office only needs to approve it if it is over 12 months. And I mean, with the relocation agent, it always then has to move to the relocation reviewer. For storage, you need the extra approval of the district administrator. So correct answer is C. Okay, next question. Reestablishment expenses are payments in addition to the moving expenses actually incurred in relocating and reestablishing at the replacement site. So what is the maximum amount allowed for reestablishment? Is it 25,000, 10,000, 28,000, or 40,000?
Looks like we've got 25,000 on there twice, so I
Oh,
imagine either one of
okay.
those two are going to be correct. I'm going to close the poll out and share it.
Um, okay.
There we go. Everybody's right.
Okay.
Right?
Yes, it is 25,000.
Okay. I'll hide that.
Okay. Um, okay, now we're going to jump to, I had module 7 as part 2, but I think you actually have these only scheduled just for today, right? Part 1 and
We
part 2
do.
both for today.
Yep.
Okay, because it's such a long module. I was going to separate part 2 out into a second one.
Mhm.
Um, and because I already think we're over time. So we can either just continue to go through, or we could reschedule the second half if, I mean, because it's we're only about half through. Yes, I didn't realize
It's
until
up to
we're
you,
doing.
Patty.
Okay, I mean, I can keep going, and we can get this done today. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Okay. Um, okay, we're going to talk about the fixed move schedule. Now, or I'm sorry, the fixed payment. And remember, I talked earlier, the fixed payment is not to be um, confused with the fixed move schedule. Fixed move schedule is residential, and that's based on the schedule. You have that handout, number of rooms in a residential dwelling. Fixed payment, this is specific for businesses, non-residential parcels. The fixed payment is an optional payment that a business owner can choose instead of or in lieu of moving expense. So they can choose this in place of getting move costs determined, submitting receipts for reestablishment, submitting a claim for search expense, or for non-related move expense, like like we talked about with the one-time payment for water usage. This is all in lieu of that, and it's called a fixed payment. So if the displaced business elects the fixed payment, it is important that the relocation agent explains to the business owner that he and she does not receive any additional payments for actual move costs. So he understands that this is in lieu of the other payments. So the maximum that they can receive for this payment is 40,000. The minimum is 1,000. Which highlights the fact that in this section is primarily intended really for small businesses. It's very good for a small business that maybe doesn't have a lot to move, but does have a net earnings that is high enough to be able to get a nice fixed payment. The eligibility criteria are listed on your business moving and your benefits chart that you have in your handout. The business must have personal property at the displacement site to move, and has to vacate or relocate from the site. Now, the business also, you need to determine that they cannot relocate without a substantial loss of existing patronage. This is, if the fixed payment is kind of like a going out of business payment. Generally, this means a loss of profits or gross revenue. So, according to the federal regulations and our policies and procedures, businesses are assumed to suffer this loss unless the agency can show otherwise. So if a business is part of a chain operation, it's not eligible for a fixed payment. So what qualifies them as a chain operation is if they have um, 3 other of the same or similar businesses that means they have to have a total of 4. So if they own a Rallies, and they also have 3 other Rallies, um, that's a total of 4. So that would make them not qualify for this payment. If they have a Rallies and they only have 2 other ones, That's only 3. So they would still qualify for this payment. So remember, it's 3 other, so a total of 4. So a person whose sole purpose at the displacement site is either renting a dwelling is not eligible for a fixed payment. So that means a landlord. A landlord is not eligible. Finally, the business, the amount it has to contribute materially to the total income of that business. This location has to contribute materially. So what are the other qualifications for them to qualify for this? They have to have had either an annual gross receipts of at least 5,000, or they've had to have an annual net earnings of 1,000. Or it has to have contributed again to at least 1/3 of the owner or operator's annual gross income from all sources. So let's look at how we calculate a fixed payment. So we're only going to discuss the fixed payments in the context of businesses. While this payment computation would apply to farms, an agency would compute the fixed payment a little differently, also for a nonprofit. So for purposes of today, we're just talking about how we're going to apply this to a business. Again, in Relocation 202, the advanced class, then we'll go into much more detail as it pertains to farms and nonprofits. So the agency uses the average annual net earnings of a business for 2 years immediately prior to the year the business is displaced to compute the fixed payment. So let's say in the example on the slide that Rita's Flower Shop is being displaced in 2014. So we're going to request the tax returns for 2012 and 2013. Based on the tax returns Rita provides the agency, the net income for 2012 is $18,000 and the net income for 2013 is $15,000. And note I'm saying net earnings, okay? The average of the 2 years, you're going to add the 18,000 and the 15,000, divide by 2. The average is 16,500. So that is the fixed payment amount. And remember that it's capped at 40,000. So if this business had a higher net earnings, they could have a fixed payment up as high as 40,000, but it doesn't go over 40,000. Okay, let's go back again and look at this. So let's say here's an example of how it would still be at 40. So let's say their first year was 50,000 and their second year was 60,000. So and that would total 110 divided by 2. So the average earnings would be 55. But remember, they're only going to get the 40 because it's capped at 40. Okay, let's do knowledge check number 3. Okay, so the first question, a business may choose a fixed payment as its move option. So what is the payment based on? Okay, is it based on, remember the fixed payment, we just talked about this. Is it based on commercial bids? Is it based on the fixed move schedule, which is based on a number of rooms? Is it based on tax returns for the 2 previous years? Or is it based on receipts, invoices, and documentation? Okay, and the correct answer is tax returns for the 2 previous years. Remember, we just talked about it's the average of the net earnings for the 2 previous years of when they were displaced. by tax returns. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Question 2, to be eligible for the fixed payment, a business must meet certain criteria. Choose the criteria that does not qualify a business for a fixed payment. What situation would make them not eligible for a fixed payment? And I will tell you on the answer for number B should say 4 or more locations. So that should help you with your answer. A is which business is not eligible for a fixed payment? Is it a landlord? Is it a chain with 4 or more? Okay, let's see what you got there. I would say, so we got majority of you said D, all of the above, and that is correct. A landlord is not eligible. If there's 4 or more locations, they're not eligible. And it has to contribute at least, remember, one third of the overall income. And if it doesn't contribute, they're not eligible. Okay, question number 3. What is the current payment range for a non-residential fixed in lieu of payment? What was so what we're looking for is the cap and the minimum. So is it 1,000 to 10,000, 1,000 to 20,000, 100 to 40,000, or 1,000 to 40,000? Now we talked about the cap, the maximum, and then we also talked about the minimum. And most of you did get it correct. It is the last one. It is the minimum is 1,000 and the cap is at 40,000. Okay. Any questions concerning fixed move payment before we move on? Okay, so we'll go on to loss of goodwill. So the payment of loss of goodwill has been in existence in Ohio since 2007. And while most of our relocation benefits are directly from the Code of Regulations or from CFR 49, loss of goodwill is a benefit that is based on Ohio law. So many states and federal highway do not recognize loss of goodwill as a pay item. However, they will participate in our costs because it is a state law. So the definition in the Ohio Revised Code for loss of goodwill is it is the calculable benefits that accrue to a business as a result of its location, its reputation for dependability, its skill or quality, and any other circumstances that result in the probable retention of old or acquisition of new patronage. So when it comes to loss of goodwill, this is all about the customers. This is about losing your customers because of having to relocate the business. In our ODOT's manual section, it states the definition of goodwill as the component of value that is attributed to the reputation, the loyal customer base, the ability to attract new customers, and the location of the business. Now, you'll notice that the term does not include loss of anticipated profits. Loss of profits is addressed in economic loss. As you'll see, loss of goodwill is all about the loss of the customers due to relocating to another location. It's not about the profits, it's about the customers. So let's discuss what qualifies a business for this benefit. To be compensated for loss of goodwill, the following must take place. The entire business must be taken. To meet this requirement, it's not necessary for the acquisition to be a total take. However, the portion of the real estate being taken must have a significant impact on the business, necessitating that the entire business be relocated. The business owner must prove that the loss of goodwill was caused by the taking of the property. Is our project, are we causing them to need to relocate? And it's up to the business owner to prove that the loss of goodwill was caused by the taking of the property. So the business owner must prove that the loss of goodwill cannot be reasonably prevented by the relocation of the business or by taking the steps and adopting procedures that a reasonable, prudent person would take and adopt in preserving goodwill. In unique situations, a business does not have to reestablish to a new relocation to claim loss of goodwill. However, to comply with the requirement of Section 65-1001, the business owner must prove that there was no suitable relocation sites. A business that operates only to rent or lease space at the displacement site is not eligible for loss of goodwill. So loss of goodwill it's actually an acquisition payment. It's not a relocation payment. But since it is only applicable to businesses that relocate, on all negotiated acquisitions, loss of goodwill will be processed by the relocation agent. So let's talk about what the responsibilities of the relocation agent would be. So you need to provide the business owner with a copy of the loss of goodwill claim RE 619-1. You need to assist in filling out the claim form, forward the same via the District Real Estate Administrator to the relocation section in ODOT Central Office. There's a panel in Central Office of 3 people. They actually make the decision of whether this will be approved or denied. So it's not on the local level with the agent, the reviewer, and the real estate administrator. You're just looking to help them fill it out, see if they, what information, the support is in the package, goes down to central office. Central office takes it from there. So in submitting the 619-1 claim for loss of goodwill, the owner must provide evidence of the following. So he's got to show the amount of goodwill that is attributable to the business prior to the taking. He's got to show the amount that is attributable to the business after the relocation to the replacement site. And by law, all loss of goodwill claims are capped at $10,000. So I do have up on the slide so you can see what the form does look like. It is on ODOT's website. So there is no set format or specific criteria required for this claim. Other than the business owner filling out the 619-1, it's up to the business to decide what supporting information they compile and submit for the claim. So the most straightforward would be before and after appraisal, which discusses loss of goodwill, but this avenue would most likely be very expensive. 2 other options would be for the owner to support a claim for loss of goodwill, might be financial statements covering a 24-month period preceding the date of the NIAGFO. Could be actual financial information for 12-month period following reestablishment of the business, or could be projected financial data for 12 months period following reestablishment of the business. Option two, a narrative description of the business as it existed before the notice of intent to acquire and good faith offer, and a comparison to the business operations in the after. So the timeline for filing for loss of goodwill: all the claims must be filed no later than 18 months after, either for a tenant, the date that the move was complete, or for a business that owned the displacement site, it would be the latter of the date of either the move or the date that they received the final payment for acquisition. So lots of goodwill claims. Again, the review panel that is in central office, that consists of the ODOT administrator of the Office of Real Estate. It would be the ODOT chief legal counsel, and it would be ODOT's deputy director for finance and forecasting. Remember, on the local level, all we're doing is helping the business fill out the forms and know the process. All the decision making happens with the panel in central office. And who's on that panel? Well, we have Sarah Downs, who is the finance and forecasting, or she could delegate it to Rich Klume. Then we have in chief counsel, we have either Jody, or we have Rick Makowski in chief legal, and of course our administrator in real estate is Drew Gilmore. So those would be the three that would be on the panel, and as you see in the first two categories, they do have the ability to delegate to someone to make the decision on their behalf. So since the loss of goodwill is an acquisition payment, it may be included in an appropriation action. If loss of goodwill is included in a final appropriation settlement or a jury, then it will not be processed by the relocation agent. There must be a full coordination between the agent, the acquisition agent, the relocation agent, and or the Attorney General's office. So you make sure, if there is a claim for loss of goodwill, that it's not also being discussed in an appropriation case. Don't want any duplication of payment. So loss of goodwill claims can be combined with fixed payments. They can get that fixed payment move with that cap of $40,000, and they can still put a claim for loss of goodwill. So why is it not a duplication of payment? Because loss of goodwill is an acquisition payment, and a fixed payment is a relocation payment. Okay, so let's do a knowledge check. Number 4. Question. Oh, where's my knowledge check? Okay.
I can go ahead and put the questions up for you, the polls.
Okay, that's fine.
Talk them through it.
Yep, if you can put it up, I can read it. Okay, so the first question, loss of goodwill means, is it loss of profits? Is it loss of patronage? Is it loss of loyal customers? Or is it both B and C? And the answer is D. It's both B and C. Remember, it's not about the profits. That's economic loss. And it's about the patronage. It's about the customers. That's what they have to prove. Okay, next question. Which of the statements is not true to loss of goodwill? Okay, so A, is it capped at 10,000? It's truly an acquisition payment. C, it's approved by the relocation reviewer. Or D, it's applicable only to business displacements. Okay, and the correct answer is C. Remember, you're marking what is not true. A is true because it is capped at 10,000. B is true because it is an acquisition payment. C is not true because it's not approved by the relocation reviewer. It is approved by a panel of 3 in central office. And D is true because it applies to business displacements. Okay, question number 3. A business can claim both loss of goodwill and the fixed payment in lieu of. Is that true or false? And most of you did get it correct. That is true. They can claim both because loss of goodwill is an acquisition payment and fixed payment is a relocation payment. So it's not considered a duplication of payments. Okay, let's move on to economic loss.
You know, Patty, I'm going to have to maybe have you reshare your screen because I'm still seeing the answer to the last poll up there. Are you still seeing it?
I am. Okay,
Okay.
let me.
So maybe if you can go to sharing and then stop sharing and then reshare. There you go. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, economic loss. So payment for economic loss has been in existence in Ohio since 2007, just like loss of goodwill. Again, Federal Highway does not recognize economic loss in um, the CFR. However, they participate in it because we have passed a law, just like with loss of goodwill, so it is part of Ohio. So economic loss is a true relocation payment. So as you will recall, loss of goodwill is an acquisition payment. So in the Ohio Revised Code, it requires that a business owner must prove economic loss by a preponderance of evidence. So compensation for actual economic loss shall not include any attorney's fees and shall not duplicate any amount awarded as reimbursement under any other acquisition or relocation benefits, including loss of goodwill. So with economic loss, unlike the loss of goodwill, economic loss is not capped at a dollar amount. Theoretically, the amount has no limit. However, it is based on the displacee's business's annualized net profits calculated for a certain number of days. Economic loss cannot exceed 12 months of net profit of the business on an annualized basis. The tax year prior to the date that the displaced business was made eligible for relocation benefits is used to establish the business's annual profit. If they did not have a profit, then they don't qualify for economic loss. Economic loss is calculated one of two ways. If we have a successful negotiation, then the amount is limited to 15 days. The 15 days can be extended by the agency if the move is unusually complex. and this must be approved by central office. If we appropriate the property, the company is entitled to 12 months of annual net profit, minus the time between the offer and the appropriation filing, with a minimum of 15 days. And this, again, in Relocation 202, we go into much more detail on how this benefit is actually calculated. The important things to remember about economic loss is that 15-day. It's based on 15 days. Unique circumstances can be extended. Does require central office approval to be extended. So, what's the eligibility for reimbursement of economic loss? The owner must prove, again by a preponderance of the evidence, that any economic loss was due to the business relocation and not other factors. The business must provide ODOT with proof of its net earnings, which would be signed copies of tax returns, certified financial statements, other reasonable evidence that is required to support a claim for economic loss. Businesses can obtain copies from the IRS for their tax return transcripts. If the business tax returns or other very verifiable proof of earnings are not provided to the relocation agent, or if the information shows that the business did not realize a net profit, then they are not eligible for economic loss. Now, we also have a form for economic loss, just like we do for Goodwill. The form for economic loss is RE 621-1. The relocation agent will assist them in filling out this form. Then the owner must attach all the financial documentation and the related supplemental information needed to support their claim. And you should have a copy of that form in your handouts. So economic loss is a relocation benefit, and therefore it would be a duplication of payments for a business to receive both a fixed payment and a payment for economic loss. So if they choose to do the fixed payment, which remember we talked about, that has the cap of the $40,000, they will not qualify for economic loss. And also, economic loss cannot duplicate any payments for loss of goodwill. So agents must be very careful when you're processing claims, especially when a parcel has been appropriated and loss of goodwill may have been included in the appropriation settlement amount. So for this reason, the agent is required to prepare a memo to file, and you need to list all the relocation reimbursements for which this business has been paid, and this is to accompany the claim when it is submitted to central office. So you have to verify they did not make a claim for loss of goodwill through acquisition or the appropriation, and they have not made a claim for that fixed payment. So the responsibilities of the relocation agent is to, of course, fully explain all the provisions of the economic loss. You begin this at the pre-act survey. You need to explain them again, when you first meet with them and give them their offer letter. You need to give them a copy of the form, so they're fully informed as to what the process will be. And you need to make sure they understand that, again, if they put a claim for this, they cannot make a claim for a fixed payment or loss of goodwill. The time for filing for economic loss is 18 months. It's similar to loss of goodwill. For tenant businesses, at 18 months is 18 months from the date of move. For a business owner who owns the displacement site, it is the latter of either 18 months from the date they move or from the date they receive final payment. Okay, so we have our last knowledge check for and let's see. I will go ahead and I will read. Okay, there we go. Question number 1, economic loss means, does it mean loss of profits or does it mean loss of patronage? And the correct answer is A. It is loss of profits. Remember, Goodwill is the one that's all about the customers and the loss of patronage. Economic loss is all about loss of profit. Okay, so question number 2. Economic loss is specific for Ohio. Is this true or false? Okay, we got about 50-50 on that. It is specific for Ohio because as just as loss of goodwill is, because remember I talked about how you will not find loss of goodwill or economic loss in 49 CFR, and most states do not. They do not have a loss of goodwill or economic loss. It is specific to Ohio because Ohio back in 2007 actually passed state law adding these two benefits. Okay, question number 3. Economic loss has a maximum payment of, is it 10,000, 40,000, 20,000, or does it have no cap? And 100% no cap. Very good. Yeah, it's based on annualized, and I mean that can vary, but does have the 15 days, which could be extended where for good cause. But yeah, there is no cap. Okay, question number 4. Economic loss is a true acquisition payment. Is that true or is it false? Okay, correct answer is false. Loss of goodwill is the acquisition payment and can be discussed in an appropriation. Economic loss is a true relocation payment. Remember, with economic loss, because it's a true relocation payment, you cannot also have a fixed payment and you cannot qualify for loss of goodwill. Okay, we are done with module 7. I will go over learning outcomes, and then um, I would really like for you to try to get your quiz done um, by end of tomorrow, because I want to give you some instructions about the exam. On the exam, for those of you who qualify to take the exam for Module 7, I will be emailing the instructions and the link to you Thursday morning. But you're going to have some time. Let's see. I believe, and I was hoping to confirm it, but I don't have it on here. I believe the exam itself has a time limit of 2 hours once you start it. It has 40 questions. You can go back and forth in the exam and change answers until once you put your answer down for the 40th question, it locks all your answers and automatically starts tabulating your final results. So if you want to move back and forth through it to double check your answers, you have to do it before you click on that 40th question. So I will send the exam out on Thursday morning for those of you that qualify to take it. If you did not attend all the sessions, if you did not take all the quizzes, I'm also going to be looking at the engagement report to see if you actually if you actually attended the sessions, because if you only hopped into one for 10 minutes and that was it, I may not qualify you for that exam. So if you qualify, I will send that to you on Thursday morning, and you will have you can choose when you're going to go in and take it. You don't have to take it right on Thursday. I believe that Paula and I talked about it. We were going to give you until the following week, um, and I'll send you those specific instructions when I send it to you, so you have time to go ahead and review and study before you hop in to take it. In between then, you know, feel free to call me, talk to me about anything on here. If you want me to go through a review with you on the all the like we do at the end of each model with all the learning outcomes, all you do is give me a call and I'll run down all of the learning outcomes from each module that we went through. Any questions about anything particular that you're having issues with, you're not getting on the knowledge checks or you're missing on the quizzes, feel free to give me a call. I'm available Wednesday. I'm available Friday. I'm probably available next week. Just give me a call and we'll figure out a time to get together before you click on the exam, because once you start it, you've only got 2 hours from start to finish. You have to get at least 70% or better to pass it. So are there any other questions? Any questions you have for me um, before I'll go through the learning outcomes just for today, and then this will finish this module. If you have any questions, please put them in the question box, and then or if you want to talk with me personally, send me an email. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go over the learning outcomes. I know this has been a long session. I apologize for that. There was just a lot of information. Okay, so our learning outcomes for today, we talked about the move options for residential. You have the commercial, the self-move, using the fixed move schedule, the actual costs, or a combination. Non-residential moves, you've got the commercial move, or you've got the self-move, and or you've got the actual costs. The business can also choose to have that fixed move payment, which is in lieu of search, move, reestablishment. It's in lieu of all of that, and it has a cap of $40,000. Okay, what is the criteria for reimbursing for a non-residential move expense? Remember, they have to be actual, reasonable, and necessary. What is the maximum for reestablishment expense for reimbursement? $25,000. There's also those non-related non-residential move costs we talked about, which could be the which could be the connection of utilities from the right of way to the building, or the one-time usage fee for water for a laundromat. We talked about the in lieu of payment based on the prior 2 years net earnings averaged, and with the range of payment being minimum $1,000 to $40,000. We talked about loss of goodwill being an acquisition payment, economic loss being a relocation payment. If they receive economic loss, they cannot also have a fixed payment or loss of goodwill. If they receive the fixed payment, they cannot also apply for economic loss. It's a duplication of payment. Okay, that's all I have as far as the follow-up for the learning outcomes. I do not see any questions in the question box. So this module is done. Again, if you would like to call and have me personally go over any review of the modules, the learning outcomes. If you have any questions on anything you're struggling with, feel free to give me a call. I would be more than happy to go over things with you. With that, thank you for attending not only Module 7, but Relocation Assistance 101, and good luck on the test. If for whatever reason you fail the test, we can talk about a retake and maybe go, review ahead of time to help you with the next try. So with that, thank you very much for attending today. And that concludes our webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.